Hello, good evening, Happy New Year to everybody. Welcoming you to 2023, and this is my first live for this year. And I'm hoping that I will see you all as often as possible this year. So, today we're going to be talking about effective parenting, right? To give you briefly, pretty much all of us have some idea, either vaguely, if not definitively, about what we want for our children, how we want them to grow up, or how we want to be as parents for them. And a lot of us, many times, do end up having this confused state whether what we are doing is enough or whether what we are doing is aligned with what we want as parents or from our children. And that can really make the journey quite confusing, so to say. So today we're here with Sonal Kothari to be talking about what defines effective parenting and what are the things that we need to keep in mind in this endeavor. So I'm going to take a minute to invite her in. Just a moment. Yes, send the invite. So as she joins in the meantime, I'm Preethi. I'm a parenting coach. I'm integrated parenting. Here's Sonal. Yeah. Hello, how are you?
Good, nervous, good, excited.
And Happy New Year to
Thank
start
you,
with.
Preeti. Thank you. And to you too, and to the audience, whoever's here.
Yeah. Is it on my side? The volume is a bit low.
Hang on, let me see if it might be me. Is that better?
Just a minute. Okay. Can you say hi now?
Hi.
Yes, that's better.
Okay, great.
Yes, so let's start with an introduction. Sonal is she's a trainer, PT, facilitator, parent effectiveness training program. So that's one of the very first parenting workshops that I ever did after having been a mental health professional for almost, I think, 8 years or so back then. And it was definitely a fantastic experience for me. And I really looked all over the place for an India-based parenting coach, parent trainer. And that was really, really hard, I have to tell you. And I'm so glad I found you.
Me too, actually. I think, yeah, we've grown together, haven't we? In so many ways, you and I.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
there's been so many places of overlap too between like our work and so just the path that we've grown on has been
And
very
our
parallel, I feel.
ideologies, principles, all of that.
Sorry, what's
Our
that?
ideologies and principles.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, very much so. And it's been really nice to be able to bounce off ideas and things. And
Yes. So can we start with a brief introduction from you?
yeah, I was thinking about that. I think how I define myself is a seeker of compassion and clarity. I guess that pretty much is how I see myself. There used to be this joke, in when I was training. I'm a TA practitioner, and I've been in TA training for a long time now. And when we first began, there was this joke that every program that shows up, Sonal will join. So this is how I am. This is primarily how I define myself. I'm an empath. I'm a mother of two. My kids are now 21 and 16. It's been quite some journey. I think being a mother defines me probably the most, and all my work is centered around that. This parent-child relationship is, I guess, something that I've been interested in since I was very young. I remember this first conversation I had with my mom when I was 9, like, what do you want to be, Beta, when you grow up? And I'm like, I want to be a kindergarten teacher. And why? And all of that. But basically it turned out, and that's the path I'm on right now professionally, even personally, is How
One
do we
moment,
fit?
Sonal, your
Yes.
voice is dipping every now and then. Maybe you want to try to disconnect your Bluetooth and
Yes.
just
Let
check
me.
it. Do you want to try that?
Yeah, I do.
Switch
Uh,
off the Bluetooth.
yeah, let me see. All of this is in here. Is that better now?
Yeah.
Okay. So basically what I'm deeply interested in, what I feel like my life's work is to heal or tend uh, my own parent child journey, whether it is my internal parent
Mm,
and my internal child. That's the
mm,
psychotherapy or the therapy work that I do. Or
mm,
it's tending to my own journey with my mother and my
mm,
ancestral lineage through my mother, and
mm,
then further to my children. And because I'm so interested
mm.
in this topic for myself, it just extends into working with other people, with parents. So yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And a lot of what you said about the inner parent, the relationship that we have with our parents that reflects or comes up in
Yeah.
our relationship with our children and how we work through that, how this is related, etc.
Yeah.
It might be quite new for many parents who are viewing this. And to put it out there, we will be going much deeper into it as we go. Is that
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely. And we yeah. So I think one of the things that I have arrived at through my own journey and through the work I do with so many parents and my clients too, because it ends up being, we don't come from a vacuum. We do not come from
Mm,
a vacuum. We didn't suddenly arrive here. We arrive in a context, and that context is our family, my mom, my dad, their
mm,
parents, the context of my culture, the context of my gender, the context of the time that I'm in, right? I was born in 1971, and what is that? Okay, I dated myself right now. But all of that defines, right, who I am as a person, and um, that in turn defines who I am as a mom to my kids
mm.
in this time and in this, yeah, I forget what they're called, but these Gen Zs, right? Yeah, all this. So
The
yeah,
upcoming generation. Yeah. So this is something that, okay, the term that we use is called the seer conditioning. So all of us are born into this context, and this context is defined by the social context that we're born into,
yes,
the kind of culture, the traditions,
abs-
um, all of that.
yeah,
Which also talks about the times and the kind of exposures that we have, technology that we have, all of that comes into play.
yeah,
Then there is the educational background of the
yeah,
parents, right? So what kind of education do we have and what kind of exposure has that brought in for us?
yeah,
And then there's the economic context in which we are brought into,
right.
and
Very,
then the religious context. So religious context again talks about the kind of faiths that we were born into, we were exposed to, and we eventually imbibe in ourselves and want to follow. So there is the socio-economic, educational, and religious background. That pretty much sums up the context from which we come in. And that's a beautiful thing that you brought up right at the start.
thank you. Yeah, so pretty much when I work with parents, this is the backdrop, right? So uh, it's really difficult to then come in and tell people how they should be or what they should do. Um, Particularly, there's no one rule that fits all, right? There's no
Mhm.
one, you should always put your kids to bed at so and so time, or they should get up in the morning and do
Absolutely.
this and this, and so on and so forth. So those things don't work, and I know there are a lot of programs talk about it like that. Like there's a
Mm.
structure, there's a routine, there's a way of things like even the concept in parenting is very consistency, for example, right? It's such a cornerstone of a lot of parenting related conversations. How can you be consistent if one day, I don't know, you're just stretched for time? Like, for example, if you want consistency, don't give your children the iPad, say, for example, more than 2 hours a day. But you've got a deadline, you're not well, then you want to
babysitter, you don't have anybody to take care of the kids, so you hand them the iPad for two extra hours, for example. Right? So it's hard to be consistent when we are not the same person from day to day. Our context is not the same from day to day. The children are different from time to time. So it's hard to be that. So one of the things that I really, I'm going to bring in PET, which is the program that I facilitate, is very robust. It's a very elemental program. Did you want to go there now right away? I'm sorry. I'm just kind of jumping the gun here.
No problem at all. In fact, this was one of the biggest takeaways for me, that it's inhuman to expect consistency from myself as a parent, given that the context in which we live, the day-to-day life, the kind of stresses, that's always fluctuating.
Yeah.
And we have our own baggage to deal with. We have our own challenges to deal with.
We do.
We have unmet needs as well. So given all of this, to expect consistency from a parent, it's just too much. And that was probably my biggest takeaway from PET when I did that with you. Thank you for that.
Yeah, it's such a relief, like, right? So it's a psychological impossibility. The kind of consistency that we expect, like robots might be able to do that, and even then the context may change and they might not either. But like, I'm just saying that there's so many little nuggets and things like that in the program. So I've been a parent for 21 years. I pretty much from straight off the bat, like I was pregnant with my first born, and I hit upon this book. It was called Your Child's Self-Esteem. The author's name eludes me, and I picked it up while I was going to this for one of my checkups. And in the hospital lobby, there were all these books, and there were just like a sale going on. And I just picked it up. It was 50 cents or something, and it set the tone, it set the path, it set the kind of the journey, the context of my journey as a parent. And then it's been like, so I've been in a lot of parenting programs. I've done a lot of reading, a lot of research, a lot of observation, because I'm an observer of human nature. So I observe what people do, how parents are, what works, what doesn't work. Had a lot of conversations with a lot of people. And I find that in all of these years, there isn't a program that I find as robust as the PT program, right? I feel it's a must do for humans should apply, like humans should do the program, especially if you want to be a parent, because the way we parent normally is very ad hoc, right? It's like from what we know, it's kind of more like a knee-jerk response. Not everybody and not in all situations, obviously, but more or less, right? We parent from what we know. A lot of it is driven by our own fears and our own limitations. So how limited I am in the dialogue between my internal parent and my internal child, right? How critical my internal parent is of my internal child determines, that's the barometer of how I will parent my child, right? That's the limitation. And so the program doesn't tell you what your values should be. It doesn't tell you what your how to live your life. None of that. But it does give you the language of communicating, which is respectful, right? So it's respectful of myself, it's respectful of my child, and it is respectful of the relationship I have with my child. So there's three entities here. So it's like my Bible. Like, every time you open up one of your religious books, or it could be other books, like there's something new, or you see the same thing, but you deepen your understanding of it, or you understand it in a new way. It hasn't. I tear up. I get so emotional. I don't know this year.
Yeah, I can see that, right? Absolutely. So with so many variables that are happening, the context that we spoke about, the unrealistic pressure that we have as parents. You said, when you walked into the, doctor's place, you picked up something there, and that set the tone of your parenting journey right there.
Yeah.
Okay? And for most people, a lot of parents out there, what sets the tone is very, very unconscious. unconscious. We are not even aware of it.
Yeah.
And it's not a choice.
Yeah. It's in
And
that.
because of that,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
making that shift, getting our values aligned with our behavior, sometimes just feels overwhelming
Yeah.
or very uncomfortable,
Yeah.
disconcerting, so to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because in your gut, you know
Sometimes.
when you've done a misstep as a mom, or
Mhm.
as even as a mom observing your child with the father, or observing your child with a grandparent or something, when something goes amiss, and
Hmm.
and something misfires, or you've hurt the child, or there's been a rupture in the relationship, at a very gut instinctual level, we all know कि कुछ गड़बड़ हो गया है,
That's
right?
true. I
But
can
then we
so
don't
relate to that.
know what to do, is
Mm.
basically what you're saying, right? Like we don't know what to
Yes.
do about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Happens to me to this day. Just saying.
So right off, let's get on to who, according to you, is an
Yeah.
effective parent.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just gonna straight away pull from the Gordon model, which is Dr. Gordon's parent effectiveness training, and I again I feel it's a really good working definition for who an effective parent is. So, an effective parent is one who listens with empathy and understanding when the child is experiencing a problem. Okay, so that means that when your child is having big emotions, or your child is going through, I don't know, a friend was mean to them at school, or your teenager is struggling with a relationship issue, or having peer pressure, or your toddler is getting an injection and is crying, or anything like that, they're sick, right? So how can I be an effective helping agent to my child? How can I be available to them? And I want to define another model of describing this, but that's an effective parent. And an effective parent is one who, when they're sitting, when they're being inconvenienced by their child's behavior. So my child is, I'm on the phone, and my child is crying. So they're inconveniencing me. I have to make dinner, but they want me to come and play with them. Or I need, I don't know, I need peace and quiet at night, but my son decides at 7:30 in the evening to play his drums, right? So when my child is inconveniencing me, how do I confront my child in a way that mera respect rahega, my child's respect is maintained, that I'm not coming at him like stop this, or you stop annoying me, versus it's really late and I'd like some peace and quiet at the end of the day, right? It's a very different way of communicating. So how do I convey to my child that they're inconveniencing me, and how do I get them to modify their behavior out of consideration for my needs? So that's an effective parent. So I'm important, my child is important. When my child and I get into a conflict of needs or solutions, which means that my child has a need and I have a need, and we're in a little this thing, usually what happens in that situation is either the parent wins because they impose their will and power. We have a lot of power as parents. We have money, we are bigger, depending on how old your child is. And we impose our solution on the child, right? Or the child has a, I'm going to call it very carefully, not to define certain behavior. The child has a big reaction or a tantrum, and we accommodate the child, right? So in this situation, one person wins and the other person loses. If this goes on long enough, there will be resentment in the relationship. I will come to resent my child, or my child will come to resent me. And the teenage years are a good example of a lot of parents not having that communication with their child. So in PET, the way we define an effective parent when there is a conflict of needs and solutions is by making sure that everybody's needs are met. I have a need, you have a need. Let's talk till everybody's needs are met. Everybody wins, nobody loses. So we're not arguing about solutions. So a good example would be my daughter was, I think she was about 9 or 10. And she wants, I want my own room. We don't have another room to give you, child, right? So what's
You don't
going
have
on?
this?
We didn't have another room.
Acha.
मुझे अपना कमरा चाहिए. I want my own room. I'm like thinking, oh God, teenage started early. But I'm like, why do you need your own room, right? So she says, her brother, who was 5 years younger than her, is make such a mess in the room with his toys, his Hot Wheel cars and his Lego and his building blocks, etc. That I don't like it. I need my own room. Okay, we don't have another room. Let's pull all of his toys out of the room into the common space. The room became clean. She never asked for a room again. And she's 21 and they still share a room. She's gone off to college now, but like they still share a room when she's here.
Wow.
So an effective parent is one who, when there is a conflict of needs and solution, problem solves fairly. And the last value that defines an effective parent is when there's a conflict of values, right? When just in a sense, who I am as a person and who my child is as a person, we just differ. It could be anything. As they get older, it's things like religion and what kind of music I hear, and who I hang out with, and what kind of clothes I wear, and do I drink or not drink? Do I eat meat or not? Like those kinds of things, right? It's a difference of values. I am my own person, and I have a right to live my life. And how do you share values respectfully? So an effective parent, just to summarize, an effective parent listens with understanding when their child is experiencing a problem. An effective parent confronts respectfully when they're experiencing a problem with their child, and then they problem solve fairly, and they share values fairly, or respectfully.
And at this juncture, I'm sure a lot of parents, especially parents of much younger children, the first question they're going to ask is, I don't think I'm going to be able to sit and talk to a 2-year-old or a 1-year-old or a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old with their unreasonable demands.
Yeah.
What do you want to say to that?
You are wrong. Yeah. I'm thinking if I should go launch into another example. Like communication and conversation is really important, right? I think the lifeblood of parenting is communication. I really truly believe that. It's true of any relationship, really, whether you're at work or whether you're with your spouse or your friends. Anything, communication is everything, right? Some communication is effective, some is not. So it's not different with a 2-year-old. It's not even different with an infant. I was a kindergarten teacher for a few years, and I have not seen a 2-year-old whom, if you ask politely, they do, like, if they have something in their hand which is theirs and they don't want to share, if you ask politely, they do. I have not seen a 2-year-old who they don't have the capacity to not give it to you. So even they understand respect, right? If you want to take things away forcefully and all, then you'll have another situation, completely different situation on your hands. But you can communicate with 2-year-olds. You can, just on so many levels, right? It's modeling. It's teaching them language, right? It's teaching them respect. People talk about consent, right? They talk about consent. And it starts there. When they're an infant almost. You talk about a 2-year-old, so I'll talk about a 2-year-old. When you're feeding them, sometimes children, when they're fed or they'll turn their face or they'll say no, right? Respect. Okay, you're full, you don't want any more. How about one more bite? Let's try a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Okay, fine, you're done. Done. Like, to not override that. I don't know if I'm answering your question, Preethi.
If you are. So, in fact, I want to give you an example.
Yes.
I think when I did, again, I know I'm talking about, Anyway, so when I did PET, my son must have been all of 15, 16 months,
Young
18 months, maybe 1.5 years at the most, can't be beyond that, right?
No.
And I think in the 4th, 5th session, it was a Sunday early in the morning. My son was still breastfeeding at that point in time. And when he wakes up, he needs me, or rather, he needs my breast. He doesn't need me, right? But nevertheless, at that point in time, when I was about to leave, I would ensure that I tell him, Chinama's leaving, Amma will be back at a certain time, you can be playing with Appa. By the time you do this, this and the other, I would be back, and then we can do X, Y, Z. And this particular day, there was a lot of tears. There are a lot of fears, like, no, he can't really speak very clearly, but he's telling me, no, I don't want you to go.
Letting you know very clearly that he doesn't
Yeah.
want you to. Yeah.
And at that point in time, I told him, Mama needs to go. And he said, you like work? In his, whatever, the baby language in our, in Kannada, nin kelsa beku, as in you love work more, is the way I understood it. I said, I still love you, but I do love my work.
Wow.
He cried, but he said, okay, bye.
Yeah, my heart.
All it took was couple of minutes. In another situation, I'm sure me trying to fight that, me trying to pull back, me trying to justify, no, but you can do this, no, but I'll be back. It would have just dragged and dragged and dragged and dragged. And it just took a couple of minutes. I was slapped. He was 1.5. So absolutely. So that respect, I would also like to say that this particular kind of communication holds so much kindness, compassion, which is what brings up, I think, a sense of connection and belonging. And it is that foundation on which cooperation is built.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
This is that, I think that pretty much aligns with all age groups. It doesn't matter whether it's a 6-month-old or a 16-year-old or a 60-year-old for that matter.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And thank you for sharing that, Preethi. It just warms my heart. I this is a good launching place for me to there's this person called Adam Young whose work I follow, and I did a workshop with him online last month, and he talks and you can go to his website, Adam Young Counseling, I think it's called, and he has some free resources, and one of them is a sheet on what he calls the big 6. So in parenting, to raise children well and like whole, right, like he defines 6 things, and these 6 things you can find in a lot of developmental psychology work. There's different kinds, different models, different ways of looking. I mean, it's just one human being. People look at it through different lenses and different parameters, but in a sense it's the same, because we're human beings, we're the same. So he talks about the big 6. The first one is attunement, and he talks about attunement. I love his language. He talks about it as are your parents tuned into your heart? Do they see your heart? Do they feel your heart? Which means, do they feel your feelings, like when you're upset or joyous or proud or angry or just rageful about something, right? Or sad? Do your parents tune into that feeling that you have? And as babies, when babies are born, they have zero capacity to self-regulate. That means that they need another person, a mom or a dad or a caregiver, to help them regulate their feelings, to help them manage their upset when they're scared or when they're hungry, right? So that when you do this and you self-love your child, or you hold your child with love and tenderness, and you talk to them in that soothing, kind voice, then the child learns to calm itself. It cannot do that by itself. It's not a biological reality for the infant. So the first one is attunement. The second one is responsiveness. When your parent sees that you're sad, do they respond to you? So if you look at a teenager, you know that they're mad and angry and things like that. You know that sometimes, but you don't respond to that. Like the parent doesn't know how or can't, for whatever reason. There are a million reasons why we as parents are limited in how we respond to our children. Or we think it's silly, or we think like it's like, bacha gir gaya and is crying. It's kuch nahi hua, kuch nahi hua, kuch nahi hua. That's not an appropriate response to his feelings, right? So do they respond? Then are they willing to engage? Like, and I wrote it down: genuine desire and willingness to be able to engage with your heart. Are your parents pursuing your heart? Like, do they care about you enough to want to know who you are as a person, and like all of that, like, you know, all that, the good juicy stuff, like and then the ability to regulate arousal. So that's kind of kind of similar to attunement. Like, so when I'm sad, when I'm angry, and that's why PET is so brilliant, because it teaches you the language of attunement. It teaches you the language of response and engagement, right? Because there's a certain language that makes you effective, and there's a certain other language that makes you ineffective. And this has nothing to do with your intention. As a parent, I assume that all parents coming to me, and especially parents who come to work with me, intend the best for their children. But somehow wo intentions and reality mein kuch gadbad ho jata hai. Like, and so this is the stopgap. This is the filler, because it teaches you the language of translating those good intentions into a good response. And then strong enough to handle your negative emotions. This is the fifth one. So this is when I am so mad. I hate you, Mom. My kids have said that to me. And it's like, oh my God, like, it's painful to hear that, but it's fine. You can't like me all the time. Truth. Right now, I said no to you for something that you really wanted, and you don't like me. You hate me. Fine. I don't like you very much right now either. You know? And these are conversations that can happen. So it's big feelings, big emotions. Am I getting rattled by it as a parent? Am I squishing it because I feel it's inappropriate, right? So the ability to handle big emotions. Then the final one is the ability to make repair. So ye to hona hi hai. It's a given that when we are raising our children, we will have rupture in relationship. ठीक है ना? So कई बार गड़बड़ हो जाएगी, कुछ गुस्से में कुछ कह देंगे, things happen. It's normal. It's great. No problem. The point is, when that happened, did you then go and apologize? Did you go and make the repair? Did you go and say, look, I was angry with your dad, and you came and I took out my anger on you. I'm sorry. I'll be more careful next time. Or feel free to remind me, Mom, you're taking out your, my kids have millions of things that they said to me, like, over the years, like, reminding me that, dude, this is not about me. This is you. Please take it somewhere else. And they don't take it personally. So do we have the ability to do the repair? And I lost my thread originally why I started this, but anyway.
So we're talking about the big six.
Yeah.
Right? So in fact, we were going to go into, what determines whether our parenting is effective or not. And I think this is a fantastic structured way of putting that out. And I really love how you said a lot of times no, almost all the time, while our intentions are positive, we intend the best for our children, may not be what is best for them.
Right.
So we end up doing what we think is best for them and not what is best for them. And I think that's a very important distinction that every parent needs to really consider. Yeah. And I think a lot of what you said also reminds me of, NVC, non-violent communication, right? So, that's also something that comes to mind, where you first attune to the other person, you offer understanding, basically. So, the basic needs in any relationship or a healthy relationship is the need to be heard, understood, and loved.
Yeah, accepted.
Understood and loved. Sometimes it's not easy for the other person to understand me, but when I know that they're hearing me and making an attempt to understand me, that itself can be really settling. And a lot of times I may feel like this person's not listening to me, they're not understanding me, but because over the years, or in the larger perspective, larger scheme of things, I know we belong. I know we can connect. I know there is this connection that is alive. It allows me to wait until I can get an opportunity to be heard and listened to.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think pretty much everything you said beautifully illustrates that. I really, really love that.
And that's one of the goals of PET, is to have more love, appreciation, contact. I'm not using all the words they use, but this is basically it, to have more harmony and peace and love and fun and contact, respect. I don't know, all the good stuff. It doesn't mean you don't have problems. Of course we have problems, but but that the problems kind of are more easily resolved, and without like the chasms that happen in relationship when communication is not effective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So even if it is not easily resolved, you can still hold connection in the process of the difficult conversation.
Bingo. Yes.
I also want to go a little more deeper into, you spoke about, okay, two things. The first thing that you spoke about, among the other things, was holding space for strong emotions, big feelings, and are we rattled by it?
Yeah.
The truth is, big feelings are difficult for big people also, for children. So having said that, what do you want to tell parents when they say, well, it's easy for you to say sitting there as a parenting coach, but when my child is having this huge meltdown at the grocery store, I'm feeling so humiliated. I could, feel the judgmental eyes. Now I'm getting riled up. Now there is the big emotion there and a bigger emotion here. Now how do I bring that around? How would you respond to that?
Oh man. I've been there. I've been in the mall.
Who has it?
With my 3, 4. I can't remember how old he was. He probably 4.5. I'm crying. He's crying. He's bawling. He's like having a big one, and he wants a balloon, and I'm saying no, and I'm holding my boundary, and it was like an hour. I don't know. It was a long time. It was like an hour, like an hour and a half, hour 15, something like that. You hold space for things like that with compassion for yourself and for the child, because the child needs compassion, the child needs understanding, the child needs you more than at any other time. And so I'm going to break this down a little bit, right? So one is that the child is having feelings and emotions, big emotions and stuff like that. And for some of us, so for some of us, anger wasn't allowed, right? So in our family of origin, anger wasn't something that was expressed, and it was looked down upon to express and be angry, raise your voice or whatever. And so when the child is having this big emotion, ghabrat hoti hai. So that's one aspect of it, right? And then the other aspect is the embarrassment part, or just not like there's just so many reasons why this might happen. So one is to manage the child and the child's feelings and things like that. And the other aspect is to manage yourself. And then there's the third situation. It's like the situation itself. Like if this was happening at home, maybe you can just leave the child. Like, I'll be back in 10 minutes. Mama's, you're like really having a big moment here, and mom can't handle it. I'm going to go get a glass of water and then I'll come back. Right. So at home, maybe it's possible. So that's the situation. But if you're in the mall, then you can just leave your child and go away. Right. So the situation is the third aspect of this. If it's happening a lot, then I would say get the support that you need for yourself. Okay, so I'm going to break it down even more. So this, if you were a parent, came to me with this question, I would say, look at your routines and structures. Right, if it's happening a lot, look at your routines and structures. Don't take a child who's hungry and cranky out to the mall or to a movie, right? Or don't miss their bedtime or things like that. Just the basics. Like look at the very basics: food, sleep, exercise, water, right? Things, just the basics. Do they have worms? Like in India, like people like deworm them regularly. Like I would talk that talk. That's one aspect. Then the other aspect is get the language of contact and communication in place, which would be something like a PET. I'm not saying everybody should do PET, though I personally think they should, but do something, figure that part out, like how to make that contact. And the third aspect is take care of yourself. If you talked about our needs not being met as parents, right? Moms, especially moms of young children, whether you're working or not working, are so stretched. More often than not, we are so stretched. There's so many things to take care of. And if our needs are not met, then there's not a possibility in this situation, and in PET we call it AH, so acceptance, genuineness, and empathy. Acceptance, genuineness, and empathy. To manage a big raw moment of a teenager even, or a young child, a 2-year-old, it requires these 3 things. And there are times when I don't have those 3 things. I don't feel genuinely accepting towards you right now, and I have zero empathy because I've got a headache, I have dinner to make, and I have a deadline tomorrow, and blah, 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 and so on and so forth. And I'm coming down with a cold and a flu or something, right? So how can I take care of myself while still being contactful with the child and letting them know that right now mom's not like fully 100% there. So that's how real it makes it. It makes it so real. So then I tell moms in a situation like that, if that's happening, who are your support systems? What are your support structures? What are your support rituals and routines, right? How do you take care of yourself? And that's non-negotiable, really, if you want to be a good parent, like, or more or less.
And almost always, they would not have even thought of themselves. Self-care is not on the agenda of most parents.
Yeah, you have to schedule in pee time sometimes, like that run off your feet.
Yeah. And another thing I heard, I read, I'm not sure, is that when this is a recurring issue, because you brought up if this is a recurring issue, is also that why is the child feeling so riled up so often? So either it's a question of also stimulation, stimulation, that's one thing. And also in the relationship, how often are they hearing no? Yeah. I remember you saying, stick to not more than 30% of the time that you negate with a child. Is that right?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Okay, so not much. This is pretty much throughout the day we keep telling our children, no, don't do that. No, don't go here. No, don't talk like that. Don't sit like that.
Yeah.
No, this is not okay. No, I'm not going to give you that. No, you can't play that. No, you can't ask this. No, you can't talk like that. No, that's not for you. No, that, like, the no is probably the most consistent thing that a child hears that day. That can be frustrating.
Yeah,
right?
it's frustrating.
And
then saying no to you, like, there's a story in my family that runs that my dad, it's maybe just before I was born, was telling one of my cousins, no. So she called him no, uncle. No, uncle. His name was no, uncle, because that's all he said to her. But yeah, I'm hearing you. So there's just so many better ways to deal with that. Like, so child is scribbling on the wall, and you say, walls are not for scribbling on. Here, paper is for writing on. See, this is a paper. And then give them a stack of paper, or even newspaper for that matter. My sister used to scribble on newspaper when she was younger. So this is the newspaper. When you feel like drawing, these are the crayons. This is the newspaper. Or what I had done for my kids was in the corridor, I had got a roll of paper. You get them at IKEA. They're really affordable, quite inexpensive. And stick a whole roll at her height all along the wall. And say, this wall, on this paper, you scribble as much as you want. So you don't have to say no. You just have to redirect. Food is for eating. Food is not for playing with. When you finish, come play here with your blocks, right? So if you're playing with...
That's also a beautiful demonstration of how you can work with the environment to create boundaries without actually putting boundaries for the child, right? So which also does demonstrate what's okay, what's not okay for the child, without the pain or the hurt or the breaking of that rapport with a no.
Yeah, absolutely. So respect for respect for me, like, because my wall is important. Clean it, or I'm gonna have to pay for it, or whatever. So I'm important. You're important, and the relationship is important, and all three get maintained when we
Another aspect that does come to mind is handling these big emotions for a lot of us doesn't come easily, because managing emotions, one has aspects of self-awareness, and as well as the ability to regulate ourselves. And this ability to regulate ourselves, big one, isn't it? This ability to regulate ourselves first starts with co-regulation, where a person, usually a child, if we start with a child, we first learn to regulate by regulating with another person. And the more we do that, eventually we come to a space where we're able to regulate for ourselves.
Yes.
And for a lot of us as adults, we've not had that
Have not. Yeah.
adult, safe adult, the matured adult, the mature parent who was able to regulate themselves and also share that regulation with
Right.
us. And so even growing up or even as an adult, we don't really have a healthy map of what self-regulation looks like. And hence it makes it all the more difficult for us to really gather ourselves in that moment of big feeling. So this can also be a great space where, you could probably say a few words about the importance of working on ourselves as we
Yeah.
reach children.
Yeah. This is a huge one for me because sorry, I'm just so many incidences, right? So when I'm like, my mother's voice coming through my mouth, and I'm like, oh my god, what am I saying? Those moments, right? But bless my mom, my mom loves me. A lot of who I am is because of her. So, but there were those moments, right? When like it's like, oh my god, what am I saying? When I'm angry, I'm using tonality or like. In our house, there was a lot of idioms. In her house, there was a lot of idioms, like a bird in hand saves two, or things like that got said, right? But many times are not appropriate to say because it's not helpful in that situation when your child is dysregulated. I'm going round and round. What was your question?
The importance of self-work.
Yeah. So the way we are as humans, well, one way of looking at it is we are a soul, right? The soul is the part of us that is part of the unified field of consciousness. Okay, nobody has to believe everything. These are my beliefs. I'm just sharing. So we have the soul. So if I don't have my soul in me, I'm just a body. I'm dead. It's just material. Me is not there. So that's one aspect. Then we have the body, and then we have the psyche or the mind. And so, yeah, sorry.
That's comatose.
Yeah, it's like
there's the body.
I'm just like,
right? So there's the body and the soul, no mind. Is that what you said?
No. So we one way of looking at us as humans is we have a soul, we have a body, and we have a psyche, a mind, right? And for the reasons that I quoted in the big six, right? The psyche is the part of us that oftentimes gets neglected in how we are raised. So we may be fed well and we may have good clothes and we may be safe from danger and things like we may have a good education. We may have a good life and things like that for most of us who will be listening to this Insta Live. That would be true. But the mind, our psyche has not been attended to in a good enough way many times, right? But as we get older and as we realize that something is amiss, it is then our responsibility, right, to get into work that helps us fill in those gaps. In essence, what we need to do eventually, and you can do this through yoga, you can do this through psychotherapy, you can do this through constellation work. There are so many things right now. Reiki, Falana, there's so many options, right? But it behooves us. It is upon us to find ways in which we can start that healing process. And the healing process is that parent voice in our head that is constantly criticizing my internal child, I need to turn that into a nurturing voice, into a supportive voice, into a caring voice, right? Into a voice that does what you said. We need to be heard. We need to be seen. We need to be, affirmed, appreciated, loved. We need to be shown compassion. That is the work. अब कैसे करोगे? Options hai in this day and age, and there's not even that much. It's lessening, right? The what's it called? The judgment on it from society around this work. The pandemic really made sure that all that went, like, people are seeking support and there's not a lot of, the word's not coming to me, but there's not a lot of judgment around taboo. Yes. There's not a lot of taboo anymore. It's going. So that's a good thing.
Yes. And to plug it in there, what you described about transforming the critical inner parent into the nurturing parent is pretty much, I think, what you do through TA.
Yes.
Yes, and that's pretty much what we do through inner child work.
Yeah. So many. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also like this. The body. There's a lot of body work that's coming in because the mind. You can work with your psyche only so much, but a lot of our traumas, and this big T trauma, this is what's his name? Oh God. Somatic experiencing work, right? I forget about it. Never mind. I like to give credit. So somatic experiencing, he calls it big T trauma and little T trauma. So big T trauma is some big event that happened, an accident happened, your dog died, or you're in a war zone or something. Yeah. But this is
Thank you, Pride Studio. Yeah.
But this isn't even his work. Big T and small T is Peter Levine, his work. So that's a big event that happened. But the small T traumas are the little things that every time I wanted to go to dance class, my mom said, no, dance nahi karni hai. In small ways, I didn't get seen, or I didn't get heard, or certain aspects and aspirations of mine never got tabled in my family or never got appreciated. I wasn't allowed to be me because I had to be a girl, for example, or be a boy, or be a certain, the eldest in the family, right? So these are small T traumas. And when we
Would it be right to say that the big T trauma is like a singular massive event, or singular event that had a massive impact?
Yeah.
And the small T is a bunch of small incidents that add up to big emotional impact.
Yes. Big T is like a big event. It could be singular or multiple. Sometimes singular, but could be multiple. And then the small T, others everyday little slights and miss being seen all the time, right? So the small T trauma also, so every time we have a trauma or a big trauma, there are big feelings that rise in us. And we don't have, and this is where the whole healing field is moving, right? The psychotherapy, this psychology field is moving towards working with the body. And the reason is that those feelings that didn't get expressed are now trapped in the body. It's like cheek nikal rahi hai aur reh gayi. Now it's trapped in the body. Now after a certain amount of time of constantly suppressing my feelings, they start to manifest in illness. And there's enough evidence in the field right now in so many people. It's just like endless number of people who have shown that when that feeling gets released, the disease goes away, right? Whether it's a lifestyle disease such as diabetes or the things, or whether it's MS, multiple sclerosis, whatever. But this is the MS, or any other thing. Like it could be chronic pain and things like that just disappear when the feeling that is trapped in that part of the body finds expression and release, right? So a lot of the field is moving in that direction, working with the body. But when you do your parenting well, and I'm going to plug it in again, you take care of it in the day-to-day language, right? You take care of it right there and then when the feeling is like your son, like you expressed, right? He had big feeling. He didn't want mom to go, but when mom understood and when he had a question and mom answered respectfully, yes, I love you, but my work is important, the feeling released. It was taken care of. रोज का रोज झाड़ू पोछा हो रहा है. ये नहीं कि wait कर रहे हैं. Something like that. Sorry, that was a bad analogy.
No problem. So to also plug it in there is in this particular, I don't want to say theory or concept. So with this explanation of how our emotions get trapped in the body and eventually cause disease, Louise L. Hay is a fantastic author for those of you who would like to refer. She pretty much has a beautiful description of what kind of thought or emotion gets reflected as what kind of a disease or an illness in the body. So you have the Golden Collection?
I refer to her book often, both in personally and in my work. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a fantastic book for those of you who are interested. Yeah. Now again, to roll that back a bit with respect to self-work, the importance of self-work. Um, can you also take us through how, since you also brought it up, with respect to this particular entrapment of emotion? Yes, at some point in time, it can reflect as a disease.
Yeah.
It will. But
Enough time, yeah.
before it really gets to the point where it's a disease or an illness, something chronic, so to say, it still will have an impact in our behavior, in the way we, um, handle our dysregulation, so to say,
Yes.
right?
So
And
those, yeah.
that's where the importance of self-work comes in. I remember us also having the conversation about when we're working with our children, when we are working towards becoming the kind of parents we want to be, we are looking at, as parent coaches, that's pretty much what we do. We not just focus on, this is what the child is doing, so ye technique use karna. So this is what the child is doing, so this is your strategy.
Right.
It's more to look at what made you choose this strategy. Sometimes this is not a strategy you chose.
Right.
So where is this coming from?
Yeah, khairat mein mila hai. Like it's something that you observed or was done in your family, and so you do it like a knee jerk. It's just a response, like that particular tone of voice will come out, those phrases will come out, like that sarcasm will come out. In India, we use a lot of sarcasm, so it's like a indirectly giving the message. Kahin pe nigahein, kahin pe nishana, like bolna kuch चाह रहे पर कुछ और बोल रहे. So this is fairly common, and it can be extremely hurtful to the child. The intention always is that the parent is trying to maybe correct the child or make them be more responsible, or make sure that they get into a good habit or something. But the way it is done doesn't usually produce the results that we want or desire, because it's just oftentimes quite shaming. Yeah. And therefore, okay, this is okay. So I'm going to answer this question slightly differently, like about self-work, right? As parents, and I include myself in that. Something showed up on my screen, so I got distracted. As parents, we spend a lot of money, time, and effort, right? Money, time, and effort on raising our children well. So whatever my capacity is, I'll send my kid to the best school that I possibly can, right? Or I will give them the best kinds of food and experiences, the best classes, tuition, etc., 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 etc. But the single most important factor, right, in contributing to a child's wholesome development is me. I make my child's environment, the psychological environment, also the physical environment, right? And it never occurs to me to invest in me. It never occurs to me, I will spend that money on a really great phone or shoes or clothes or birthday party or something thing, but it never occurs to me that अगर मैं अपनी टोन बदल लूं या मेरे को बहुत गुस्सा आता है जल्दी जल्दी, मैं थेरेपिस्ट के पास चली जाऊं, या I learn to manage my feelings better, that it would help my child so much. And that really indirectly, and actually for me, that's the way I got into this work. It is because I was having I won't say a mental work, I was having a mental health situation, maybe not necessarily a breakdown, but I was going through so much emotional stuff that it began to affect my daughter, who was 1.5 years old. And that's when it wasn't an option anymore. It's like, no, this is not how I want to raise my child. So I got into therapy, and I've been in therapy pretty much the last 20 years, different kinds of therapies and so on and so forth. And it's been the biggest gift to myself, to my children, to people around me, I think. that I'm not that hysterical woman anymore, right? Who didn't know enough, like at that time. Like that was the best I knew at that time. But for me, that wasn't good enough. I wanted to do better. So that's been my path. The image for me for that is this. This is family constellation work, which is also something that I very much encourage parents to explore for themselves, because like I said, we're in a context. There's a series on Netflix called Another Self. It's an 8-part series on Netflix called Another Self. I think it's Turkish. It's got subtitles that explores family constellation work. And I really encourage those of you who are interested to see that. So the effect for me, I come in a context of my great-grandmother, great domino effect, something that she struggled with, she passes on to her daughter, then her daughter, then her daughter, then her daughter, onto me, and I'm going to pass it on to my child unless I do something about it.
And to work on myself.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to be the dam that was the image in my head at 1.5, when Neha was 1.5. We were living in Tokyo. It's probably 2004. 2004. And I start therapy because I don't want all that thing that is passing down to topple onto my child, right? And I had the image of a dam. It was quite powerful for me at that time. So that was my Sorry, got lost.
No, not at all. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Sure.
And for those parents who are watching, I do want to say that almost always when I'm working with parents, most of the challenges with respect to how we are responding to our children comes from our child.
Yes.
There is no doubting that.
No.
No matter what the challenge, no matter what the situation, the way I'm handling it, the way I'm handling my emotions, the way I'm handling my challenges with my child, the kind of challenges that I think is big or not so big for me, all of that has a huge influence coming from our children, from our childhood, from what we have seen as children in our parents and in the way our parents parented us.
Yeah, and coping strategies, because we develop our very smart, very beautiful coping strategies, which is great because they help us move through our childhood into adulthood. So that's fantastic. But it's just that when we become adults, those coping strategies become limiting, and we don't upgrade or update ourselves with those strategies. We keep using strategies that we used as children. So that's where, we need to start looking at things.
That particular statement actually reminds me of Alfie Kohn, in one of his, I think it was Unconditional Parenting. So in that book, he mentions how the only map of parenting that we have seen so closely is that in which our parents parented us.
Yeah.
While a lot of times it caused us so much hurt, that's still the only roadmap we have. And we end up taking it on either out of loyalty or because there's no other choice.
Yeah, we feel like we don't have it.
Absolutely. And a part of us, because we love our parents so much, we either end up, if they did it, if I do the same thing, that's one way of me not having to look at how I've been hurt by my parents.
Yeah.
And on the other extreme, we do tend to go to the other extreme. I'm never going to be like my parent. I never want to do this. But in that endeavor of going to the other extreme, we will actually be doing exactly what they were doing, but in a different way.
Guilty. Absolutely. There was something you said in there, like,
Loyalty?
Yeah, love and loyalty. Yeah, love and loyalty. Sorry, I lost the threads. But I agree with everything you said. I think the only thing that I will add is just to, I think it's important, and this has been also a process and a journey for me. Like at any point of time, as a mom, I'm only doing my best, right? At any point of time. and my mom did her best, and her mom did her best. I'm going to speak for myself. Sometimes my good enough, my best is damn shitty. Okay? It's just really bad. And can I own that for my kid? Like, sorry, I had a meltdown. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have shouted. Sorry, the next 3 days I'm not going to be available. I know you need me. Like, my daughter's in the US and she needed to talk to me today. And she wasn't feeling that great. She just went back after the holiday. And I'm like, no, can't do today. It's my first Insta live. I need to prepare. I'm not available, right? So there are moments like that, and it's all right because we're all human and we're all in process. And because I have a good emotional bank balance with her, it's all good. Yeah.
Emotional bank balance. Gosh, what a lovely term. I'm definitely going to use that.
Yes.
Yeah. Now that also beautifully, what you said also beautifully captures, a little bit more deeply about the importance of repairing rupture, right? That's probably one of the things that's most underspoken by most people who talk about parenting tips, parenting, whatever. Right? So repairing a rupture is probably the most important element in my perspective. Because rupture is going to happen, like you said. It's not just with our children, but in any relationship. Who doesn't have a rupture with their parents or their spouses or their children, except codependents?
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Is that what you wanted to say?
No, I was gonna say recently I started looking at it like you go to the gym, right? And you exercise, your muscle fibers rupture. Good. Good, because if they didn't rupture, they won't build back stronger. So every rupture is an opportunity for clarification. Every rupture is an opportunity for coming closer, for growth, for understanding what just happened here. Like, what did I say? Why did you feel that way? Like, what happened to you? And this is what happened to me. And so every rupture is an opportunity for reconnection. And when the reconnection happens effectively, I'm going to use the word, then I'm just closer to you. I understand you better. I see you better. I can be there for you better. So I've started looking at it like that, and it's a pretty cool analogy for me. It's like, yeah, that's so true.
That's an amazing way of explaining that. In fact, in most places, or most people say that they try to avoid conflict. They're just trying to keep the peace. They would just go with anything that comes by. They would just tolerate or just swallow abuse, swallow unmet needs, or let things go to avoid conflict. But I learned that quite early on. Like when there's conflict, especially with a close one, run towards it, not away from it, because that's an amazing opportunity to deepen the bond, strengthen the relationship, and really expand the horizons of the relationship.
And you can't browbeat yourself into that. I cannot tell you how strongly I believe that there is a language or a framework within which the repair happens. There's a certain language of repair, and we don't learn that. We're not modeled that. I'm not saying nobody has. There are families that are deeply respectful and they have that connection and bonding in the language, the framework. But most of us do not, and it's not mirrored in our culture, in our movies, in our TV serials, in our books. Not so much. There isn't a and it's a sad situation, really.
Yeah. So it's not that given I said you need to run, I run towards conflict. Thanks for plugging that. It's really important how you run towards it. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I'm also seeing that there could be questions for those of you watching. Please feel free to add in your questions. We will definitely take that up. Just a moment. Okay, so Sahiti, I have a question about parental burnout. I've been very consistent with my therapy. I'm a counselor myself. I see how my 16-month-old requires major changes from me internally, and that's exhausting.
Yeah. Oh man, yeah. I'm gonna breathe.
Statement, not a question, but surely go ahead and comment.
Sahiti, yeah, a big love to you. Yeah, I'm a little bit feeling into your question a little bit, so just I need a minute. Yeah, so many things like toddlers are exhausting, huh? They're exhausting. They have more energy.
The question is, what can we do about exhaustion from personal growth?
Yeah, yeah. Okay,
Love that question.
I'm gonna leave that question out in the ether, okay? But the one with the toddler, yeah, that one. It's so many things, so many questions that I don't know about, like your situation, right? So, are you a single parent? Like, do you have support structures and systems in place? Like, do you have someone whom you can leave your child with for a few hours a day while you take a nap, take a break, etc.? Are you co-parenting your little one? It also depends on the personality of the child. Like some children just like have a lot more energy than others. Like how do you?
The parent in alignment with you.
Yeah, exactly. And then can you do you have things in your child's day that like that they can expend, activities that they can expend their energy on? Do you have a good routine? Sometimes I find that parents are exhausted all the time because there's not a framework to the day. Like I'm not saying that this is your situation, Sahiti, but like sometimes I find that meal times are a little off, or the child gets hungry before meal time arrives. So you want to ideally feed your child at the time they're going to get hungry. But sometimes if you're, especially for moms who are either single parenting the whole day and they don't have a lot of, or moms who are in joint families where they have a lot of duties that take them away, then things get missed. 15 minute, 20 minute off ho gaya, khane ka time. Then instead of having a peaceful meal time, you're going to have a big bawal on your hand. And if you miss it 2-3 days in a row, it's going to become a structure or a routine. Okay, so this is a good time for me to talk about boundaries, right? So if you're exhausted all the time, my conversation with you as a parent would be about boundaries. Like, where are your boundaries with your child failing you? A boundary could be meal time, a boundary could be sleep time, a boundary could be play time, a boundary could be my personal time as a mom. Do I get enough personal time? Am I getting enough rest? Am I sleeping well? Same thing? What I call out for the child, I call out for the mom, right? Are you having enough sleep? Do you get enough sleep? Are you getting enough intimate time with your partner, like with your husband or your spouse or your partner? Are you having enough me time? Do you have enough? Are you getting good nutrition? Are you sleeping? Drinking enough water? Are you getting enough exercise? You know, those things. If all that is off, then like you're literally running on empty. Where are your strokes coming from? Your stroke bucket is empty, and then you're trying to give, and the child requires a lot. So hey, so then we start working backwards and trying to see with small tweaking, because everything doesn't happen all together. Can I just get an extra hour of sleep in the morning? Can the dad take care of the child's breakfast or getting them ready in the morning? Like, where can I ask for contribution to support me in being a better mother, a good enough mother to my kid? So sometimes, this is something I want to plug in. So when the child is born, many times the dads, when we're birthing our children as moms, and we bring them into the world, the first 6 months, especially the first 3 months, but 6 months up to a year and a half. But the first initial period, sometimes the dads feel quite superfluous because there's not much for them to do. And this is something I heard that Donald Winnicott had said in one of his radio interviews way back in, I think it was in the 60s. The job of the father is to mother the mother, right? The job of the father is to mother the mother so that the mother can mother the kid. I found that so beautiful, because mom becomes like a child because her disorientation, the orientation is to the child because of the survival. There's a whole biology, psychology behind all of that, right? So the father's job is to be there for the mom so that the mom can be there for the child, and that completes the picture perfectly. But that's why we send मायके जाती है ना, हम लोग मायके जाते हैं so that we can get the massages. Not happening anymore, but like so much. But we can get the massages. We can get those bone ke laddus. We can get all. We don't have to work. Yeah, we will be taken care of. There will be women in the family that will take care of me and my baby, so that I can. And this is all wisdom that my mom has passed on to me. But yeah, I'm gonna stop. So Sahiti, I hope, yeah, okay.
He says, my support system is good. I'm working on my days more consistent now. My toddler is definitely an active one, though.
Yeah.
Right. So, what I would say to that is definitely having support system is fantastic. But a lot of times, as mothers, we also have this thing कि सब कुछ हमें ही करना है. Of course, the child is going to demand that. No doubt about it. वो है making taking consistent time for our children. I remember, I think Sonal's term is, ghada bhar ke, give that contentment of having spent time with the child.
Yeah.
Did I get your term right?
Fuzzy feeling, yeah. Sahiti person would say, take a break, mat karo. What can we do about exhaustion from personal growth? Yeah.
Having said that, I also want to say that children do have high amounts of energy.
Yeah.
Some children do have extra high amount of energy.
Yeah.
If that's the case, do try and schedule in physical activity for the child, outdoor activities for the child, and that can, that would probably be a turnaround for you.
Yeah. Also, sometimes there's something called when we were living in the US, there's something called Udo's oil, which is basically omega-3, 6, and 9, and a lot of children who sometimes the hyperactivity that happens is sometimes because of overstimulation or not enough rest. The buzzing all the time, buzz. There's just a lot going on. Then the omega-3, 6, and 9 can really help sometimes to calm the mind down and just bring relaxation. Yeah. Sometimes it's just over.
I have not heard of this omega thing. That was new for me as well.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Now let's come to, I think 1.5 hours is also not enough for us to complete the conversation. But we do want to arrive at a certain kind of conclusion here. And with all that you've shared for us, shared with us, I know this passion is also fired up by the kind of work or the kind of impact you felt with your work with PET.
Yes.
Can you share with us about the program and...
Yeah. So PET, which is Parent Effectiveness Training, was started by Dr. Thomas Gordon. His first class was in 1962. He has a background in person-centered psychotherapy. Carl Rogers is my understanding, and that's kind of the background, I guess I would say. And he devised what was called the Gordon model, which is what PET is based on. It's based on the Gordon model, and this Gordon model was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize 3 times. I forget which years it was, but so that's the kind of work that this is. It's very well recognized. His was probably one of the first, if not the first, parenting program in the United States. And about 10 years ago, when I trained, my trainer told me that there were now 50,000 different parenting programs in the United States, and this is the grandfather originator program for them. And this is still around, by the way. So it still continues to be taught all over the world through facilitators like myself to parents. The program is 8 weeks, 3 hours per week for 8 weeks, and yeah, so it's very hands-on. You're dealing with real-time problems, real-time issues. You bring them into the class, and then you learn the skills. The skills are built one on top of the other. It's a very basic, elemental, very robust framework within which you work, and you learn the skills practically in class, right? So it's a small teach, and then there'll be practice, and there's role plays, and there's discussions, big group, small group, all those. And fortunately for all of us, the program is now available online since last year. So that was the gift of COVID, I guess, for us in the PET world. Yeah, so the next one is starting next Saturday. And I do have a few spots left if anybody's interested. And I plan to offer them like in rotation for the rest of the year. So I'm excited about that.
Can you tell us what is the duration of?
Yeah. It's a 24 hours in all, 3 hours per week for 8 weeks. So every week, so we start, so for this one, we'll start on January 7th and we'll finish the last Saturday in February.
And so, where can they find, how can they register with you if they'd like?
So if you go to my website, www.journey2, the numeral 2, selfhood.com, there's a form there, you can fill it up and send it to us and then we'll get back to you ASAP. So and
I will share the link as well in the caption.
Thank you. So it's J2S Parenting is my Facebook page and you can write to me there.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been so amazing to have this conversation with you, and I have a feeling we'll come back on live a lot more, hopefully. Yeah. Yes, that would be definitely looking forward to that. And today's been a wonderful conversation with you, and I hope everybody who watched really enjoyed it, found it useful. Please subscribe to our channels, follow us for more, and we'll get back to you. If you have any questions, feel free to DM us, ping us, leave comments, and we'll reach out to you as soon as possible.
Yeah. Thank you.
Adios, and have a wonderful year ahead, everybody. And bye.